And of course, I know also that this is your evening. Of course, for me, it's we are in Singapore 13 hours before your place. So it's actually morning for us. So I'm very keen. I'm actually acutely aware of the time. So I hope that within this hour, we can achieve as much as possible. All right, I wouldn't want to delay, but it's something that I'm passionate about and I would like to share with you. All right, so thank you very much for the invitation. I'll be speaking in English, but if you have any questions, you need to ask. I'm sure, you know, Professor and Eduardo here, okay, whatever, would be able to help me to translate. And I hope to, you know, share and learn from you all as well. All right, so without further much delay, let me just share my slides. All right, and yes, all right. So my topic, as introduced, it's actually on directors' duties. All right, it's actually on directors' duties and climate change risk, and just a little bit of background, how it all started. How did this research even came about is actually quite coincidentally. I just attended, in fact, I was the moderator for an online conference held in Oxford. And that was for the Oxford Business Law blog that was held. And the topic that was discussed during that time, it was held in May this year. The topic was business law and the transition to a net zero carbon economy. And I think all of you are aware, especially I think in Latin America and Europe, that this upcoming conference by the UN, all right, which is what we call the COP26, that's to be held in Glasgow in November, will be very, very important and will be one of the landmark. All right, will be one of the key point and landmark of the whole climate change debate. All right, so and everybody is actually quite keen. That's why this is climate change now is such a hot topic, because everybody is working towards what we are going to see in COP26. All right, so why is it so significant about COP26? It's because this is the first checkpoint after 5 years. Okay, since the Paris Agreement has been signed in 2015, all right? And this is the first time that all the countries, 196 countries, will be submitting their report, what they have been doing, how they have been doing, all right? And see what is the next step that they can do. And for our conference itself, we actually had 3 main topics. And my topic, incidentally, was actually climate change in the boardroom. So I actually got to read a couple of papers from the US and from Australia. And also we talked a little bit more about the board's role, all right? And after that, because I was a moderator, I didn't speak very much, but I actually gave a comment, you know, which I'm going to share with you. The editors thought that it was very interesting. I was actually the moderator. So he said, oh, why don't you submit what you said, you know, during the conference itself, and turn it into a blog piece. All right, so I actually did it. I wrote a paper, a short paper, and it is going to be published in the upcoming book. Okay, it's not going to be very long. So actually at the moment, I'm converting it to a bigger piece. All right, so so what is it? What is my paper about? So if you look at climate issues, we all know that it's not new. All right, it's actually quite sad that we, as human beings, we identified as early as 1992 that that something should be done. All right, we had the first International Earth Summit held in Brazil, which is just next to Peru, and there were a non-binding agenda that was signed, but nothing was done. All right, In 1995, the first UN climate change conference was held. And where was it held? It was actually held in, I think, the other place, all right? Let me see, I can't remember, but it was held in 1995. And nothing was done very much as well. So the world kept going on at its speed without much being done, I would say. Some efforts were being done, but it wasn't enough. All right, so we can really see the world started to wake up, probably only around Paris Agreement, okay, in 2015, all right? And 2015, why is it important? Because there was actually a definite goal, what everybody should try to achieve. Before then, the goals were a bit more open. Everybody was just saying, yeah, the earth is dying, you know, we must do something about it. You know, climate change is affecting all of us. But efforts were not strong enough. So Paris Agreement was interesting because it says that the long-term goal is actually to hold the global average temperature to not more than 2%. And everybody should try to achieve a net zero carbon emission in the second half of the century. So that is a clear target. So as a result, of course, as you know, every country tried to do something about it, and they have this nationally determined contributions. All right, but what I feel, okay, about the Paris Agreement, that yes, something is being done, a definite target is being set, but I feel that it is still not as strong. Okay, if you are talking about environmental protection and all that, if you actually look at the Montreal Protocol in the 1987, it was actually very drastic. Okay, there were compulsory laws to ban, okay, for instance, ban certain emissions of certain hydrocarbon, halogenated hydrocarbon thing, gases before, and that had actually a good effect because it actually helped us to protect our ozone layer. So the Montreal Protocol was actually very effective. But as compared to the Montreal Protocol, we look at the Paris Agreement. The main laws that's actually being passed under the Paris Agreement is disclosure laws and carbon tax laws. All right. If you look at it in detail, basically, you can sum it up. It makes it more expensive for companies that do not yield to climate change risk to operate. That's all. It doesn't ban. It's just that if you are not aware of climate change, okay, yeah, it becomes more expensive for you because you may have to pay carbon tax. You may have to do that. So in the long run, it is not good for you. So, so today, I'm not going to talk about whether disclosure laws are enough or carbon law is enough. I'm actually going to look at the other point, is company law doing enough? All right, because there are new laws like disclosure laws, carbon tax law, but company law hasn't changed. All right, nothing has been done about company law, not in any country in response to what we call climate change. All right, and we know that company law is important because it governs, all right, it governs how companies should operate. All right, most importantly, it governs how a director should act. All right, we talk about the role of the directors, and company directly affects how a director should act. Okay, so my issue for research and for thinking is actually, is company law doing enough to push corporation to move in the right direction? Okay, we talk about disclosure law. Yes, they are supposed to disclose, but then after disclosure, so what? Right? Yes, the market may discipline for those, may actually put pressure to say that, oh, you're not doing enough, or we don't want to invest in you. But that's more for the long term. All right. Is company law doing anything to help companies to move in the right direction? My short answer is no. Okay, my short answer is no. Although if you look at the mainstream literature, and in fact, some of our participants in my panel, actually they said that company law is sufficient. All right. So today, what I'm going to share with you is a little bit more controversial, but of course, again, that's how we look at law, and we should look at law in all angles. All right. So the mainstream literature in this area says that the current corporate law is sufficient because directors can be liable if they do not consider climate change in corporate decision making. And we can see that, okay, the mainstream literature is generally, if you do a search, you can find it in this Commonwealth Climate Law Initiative and the Climate Governance Initiatives. They have been inviting country representatives, lawyers, regulators to write on directors' duties. So everybody feels that, yes, it's sufficient. All right, it's sufficient. So why am I saying that it's not sufficient? All right, and of course, I'm sharing more from a common law jurisdiction because that's where I am. Singapore follows the common law. We follow the British UK Companies Act in a sense. All right, almost similar. But I think what I'm going to discuss shouldn't, because I actually, before I prepare this slides, I actually looked at Peru's corporate law. And I think some of these things should be applicable as well. Okay, so I'm going to share it with you in a broader sense to make you think, some of these things. I'm sure, all right, under Peru company law, that directors do owe some duty to the company as well. Okay, so I'm sure, because this is like general for all jurisdictions. Okay, directors do have some form of fiduciary duty. All right, maybe fiduciary is a bit foreign to civil law jurisdiction because, again, fiduciary comes from trust law concept. But again, I think today's world, everybody knows what it means. All right, so to put it simply, fiduciary duty says that directors must act in the best interest of the company, okay, because they are stewards. Okay, the directors are appointed by shareholders. They do not own any of the corporate assets. They are merely there to look after corporate assets. All right, so by that way, they actually owe a fiduciary duty, okay, to the company. All right, so the target is very, very clear. You don't owe duty to individual shareholders. You owe duty to the company to make sure that you manage the assets well. You do not have put yourself in a situation where your own interests conflict with the interests of the company. All right, so all these are in the body of fiduciary duty, the duty to act bona fide in the best interest of the company. All right, so the mainstream argument says that directors' fiduciary duty, especially the duty to act bona fide and the duty of care, which we have. These are two separate duties. All right, today I won't go into too much. You can read my full paper when it comes out. Yes, the fiduciary duty and the duty of care together will impose a positive duty on directors to take into consideration of climate change issues. Okay, especially when they make decisions, and in particular, when climate change is a foreseeable economic risk for the companies. All right. So that is the conclusion by the mainstream, says that all our company law in most of the jurisdictions are sufficient. All right. So under this existing company law, you don't have to change anymore. Directors will consider climate change because it is part of their duty. All right. My argument says that actually that is only part of the story. I agree. All right. I agree that yes, there is a duty, but duty is only part of the story because what about enforcement? What about standard of care? Okay, what about, can you foresee the causation? There is a lot more steps before you can say that, yes, this director has breached their duty, all right, and you can actually sue, okay, you can actually take him to court, okay, and directors, they're all very smart people because I teach in the business school as well. All right. So directors, when they know that, yes, I have a duty, but it is a duty which may not be enforceable against me, they will not care that much. All right. So they will not care that much. And this was actually boiled out. Okay. Why did I come up with this? Is because if you look at the book that's going to come out, one of my participants, he did a survey in the United States and in Australia. Okay. And disclosure laws has been in for the last 5 years. But he says that, his research found that, okay, not many of the directors will actually change any behavior. Okay, all the disclosures are all what we call greenwash. All right, they just make it for shareholders to see, what they want to see. But if they are not a carbon major, okay, carbon major here, our definition is you're not in the petroleum, all right, you're not in probably dairy because you have a lot of cows, produce a lot of carbon. Okay, so if you're not a carbon major contributing a lot to, the carbon footprint in the world, what about the rest of the companies? How are they going to gauge whether their directors has fallen below the standard of care that's necessary for protecting the environment? So I find that there's actually 3 legal obstacles. Okay, duty is only one part. Okay, you still have to talk about standard of care. You still have to establish foreseeability and enforceability. All right, we come to the standard of care. All right, we know what a director should do, but how do we measure, okay, whether a director has fallen below the standard? Okay, this is always an issue because here you must remember the director did not benefit. Okay, unlike other fiduciary duties, not conflict. Okay, the directors are not in a situation of conflict, which is much more easier to identify. And you can actually say that, oh, a director self-benefited. All right, so yes, I have done something wrong to the company, so the company can punish me. You can actually take me to the court. But here, okay, it's my decision that has probably caused in the long run something affecting the environment. Okay, so how are you going to actually set a standard for that? All right. So there is a lot of debate, especially in the common law countries, whether you should take a subjective standard. That means when we say that a director has breached his duty of care, do we look at the particular directors and say that, oh, you are a director who knows, for instance, I'm a lawyer, who knows more about law. So if there's anything that's related to the law, I should be responsible. But I do not know anything about climate. Okay, for instance, climate, some of these things are quite scientific. All right, I may not know about climate. So when I make the decision, should I be measured by legal knowledge? Okay, and since I do not know any of the scientific knowledge, will I be penalized? So that's actually subjective standard. All right. But a lot of the countries now adopt what we call an objective standard. What a reasonable director in his position would be able to achieve. All right, that's what we call objective standard. Okay, so it doesn't matter as long as you are a director of a petroleum company. All right, you should be aware. Okay, even though you do not know about science that much, you should be try to find out more about it. Try to see. Okay, try to learn. So that's the objective standard that has been imposed in most of the jurisdiction now for director's duty of care. But then this is still not clear because again, we are more used to saying that, oh, you do not consider, the financial statements, you do not consider, products, marketing lines. But when you come to climate, okay, it is too wide. All right, sometimes it is too wide, especially for companies who are, again, as I said, not a carbon major. All right, I'm in the manufacturing. How do I know that certain machines that I use will cause more carbon emission? All right, or how would I know that certain materials I use would actually affect, cutting down of trees, things like that. So you actually extend too much. All right, if we are starting to think like that, then probably none of the companies can move anymore. So what is actually the standard of care that a director should have when considering climate change issues? It's actually not that easy to determine. All right, it's really not easy to determine. All right, so this is the first issue, especially when it comes to climate change, especially when it is a duty of care. All right, so the second point that I actually see is that, yeah, even if you establish the duty of care, but can you actually link causation? Can you say that it's actually contributed by me? Yeah, you say I chop down the trees, right? Because I use certain products in my factories. But then again, many people use that forest. How can you pinpoint it to me? Who should be responsible for the chopping down of the trees? For certain things. Should everybody who buys from the supplier, all right, be culpable? All right. So there is still no direct laws that prohibits that you cannot cut down. Okay, there may be law for replacement, but there isn't a broad law that says that you cannot have any more carbon emission. Put it that way. All right. So because the law is not so drastic, there is a lot of gray areas. So when you come down to pinpointing what is the causation, it becomes very difficult. And this has been shown, all right, by the 2020 Global Climate Litigation Report published by the UN Environmental Program. It shows that you can get the nations to do something about it, but it is very difficult to get the particular company to sue the particular company. All right. So it is very difficult because you find it very difficult to prove causation or establishing that the board knew that climate change would actually increase the risk, that ultimately the corporate actions can harm others. Especially climate change is a bit, the effect is not seen immediately. All right. Of course, today, if you burn down the forest, all right, do things that harm directly to the environment, yeah, you can see that that's not very good. But some of the decisions the corporate people have to make, it's actually very long term. Okay, even when something happens, some of the directors are no longer there. Can you hold them liable? All right, I give you a very, very clear example. Okay, this is one of the cases that was just being decided, and I think everybody who works in this area would know. This is the 𝙎𝙐𝙀𝙀𝙀 case. All right, this is the Royal Dutch 𝙎𝙐 case. So in 2021, the Hague Court actually held that 𝙎𝙐 would be faulted. All right, they have to pay penalty, they have to do something for not seeing for putting too low a target. Okay, for putting too low a target. So what happened was that 𝙎𝙐 promised, okay, 𝙎𝙐 actually committed itself that they would actually reduce their carbon emission by 30% by 2025. All right. And the court held that this was not enough because this was a litigation done by some civic rights group to say that this was not enough. Okay, you have to do like 45% by 2030. So there was a little bit of this debate. And of course, this case is going on appeal. All right. So it is 𝙎𝙐 itself. My argument is that, okay, so even if 𝙎𝙐 was asked to pay a penalty, all right, because of this case, can the shareholders sue the directors? Okay, to say that, yes, you should have foreseen that your target was too low when you set it, right? Can you actually fault the directors for that? Here it is a direct harm, almost a direct harm, because the shareholders are going to pay for the penalty, right? Because the court says that it is not sufficient. What 𝙎𝙐 has been doing is not sufficient. But can the shareholders sue the directors for breach of duty of care because they did not see that subsequently what we set as a target is not enough? So I'm just showing you as an example. It is very difficult. All right. As long as you do something, it may be very difficult to say that the directors has not done. Okay, as long as you do something, that's enough. Probably that would be only the standard. All right. So lastly, of course, is enforceability. Okay, the last point that I feel that the legal company law hasn't helped in especially in climate change is actually enforceability. We know, I think it's also the same, probably in Peru company law, that director's duty is owed to the company. All right. So whether standard of care, whether breach of fiduciary duty, only the company can take the action. All right. And usually the company is decided by the shareholders in the AGM. If the board doesn't take action, shareholders takes action. And if the majority shareholders don't take action, probably the minority would take what we call a derivative action. All right. And derivative action in a lot of jurisdictions, in fact, that's my next paper that I'm actually working on. Derivative action is always very difficult. Okay, throughout the years, in all jurisdictions, it is very difficult because my minority shareholders, the reason why they are minorities, they don't have money, right? They can't start the litigation. right? Money is always an issue. Secondly, it's because they are minority shareholders, they don't get the support of the majority. Most of the time, the court would say that the majority doesn't care. Why do you care? In fact, if you take action against the company, you may actually ruin the company because any litigation against the company, it's not good for them in terms of getting loans from the banks or whatever. So courts are very against, all right, derivative actions as well. So coming back to standard of care, all right, so unless the shareholders take action, which is very difficult because again, this is actually harm done to the environment, climate change, all right? Unless the shareholders are willing to take action. But in the near future, I would say that in 5 to 10 years, which is our crucial years, all right, I do not see that the shareholders would, in the general, the majority shareholders are still that environmental conscious to admit, today our company has done wrongly. We should sue the directors, okay, because they could have done better. Okay, most of these actions are brought by civil rights groups, and they do not really have a standing in law. Okay, they will have to buy shares, okay, unless they are rich enough to buy shares in the company to take action. And if you look at some of these litigation, it has been thrown out by the courts because again, they cannot prove causation. They cannot prove that they have actually fallen below the standard of care. Okay, so as I said, civil rights group, even though they may have the money, they are not shareholders. Or if they are the shareholders, they may not have the money to take action. So even before climate change issue, if you look at law literature in this area, breach of directors' duty of care is per se is very seldom litigated, whether in the US, whether in Peru, whether outside in the world itself. Just by duty of care per se, no breach of a conflict. There's no conflict. The directors do not benefit, right? Breach of directors' duty of care is not very much litigated. So why should we say that just because there's climate change issues involved, direct duty of care would be more used now? All right, so that's my question. All right, that's my question. Although I'm saying that actually, if you look at the Australia model, which is good, in fact, more and more countries are allowing regulators to take derivative actions. But again, there is a lot of arguments whether regulators should be able to take derivative actions to sue directors for breach of directors' duty. All right, and more so if it involves climate change, when you cannot really measure, or the plaintiff you cannot really identify, because the plaintiff is actually the whole world. All right. So this is actually my argument, and I'll stop here. It's a very short piece, but again, I'm writing a long piece, which you can always write email to me. Probably you will see in 1 or 2 more months it should be out. I will probably be putting it in SSCN. All right, when the paper is actually out. All right, but you can see the shorter piece at Oxford Business Law blog. I can send you the link for my paper as well. So I'll stop here, and I will take any questions. Yeah. And I hope you've enjoyed it. Yes.
It was really interesting topic, and thank you, Professor Luh Lan. Edison, I don't know if you have any questions in particular, or you want to take time for a presentation yourself.
Well, thank you very much, Abelardo. Well, I want to thank you completely to Professor Luh Luh Lan, because she made an apart about her time to speak about the responsibility of the words against the climate change. Well, I just have one question. Maybe there are more that maybe we can talk about it. But in Peru, recently, the government have enacted a new legislation about to impose or enforce the cases of big corporates. In the case of big corporates, the government try to incentivize that local companies enforce in their statutes the duty of defense or to make defense the climate and another social issues. But actually, after approximately 1 year, we have just one company that assumed this kind of enterprise as a big corporate. So maybe, I don't know if you have some feelings about it, because from my point of view, this kind of legal model is not correct, because it's not a good incentivations to directors in order to see how risks to manage. In this case, about the case of climate risk. Maybe my question would be, how would be, what is the perfect, or maybe a case of most effective rule in order that the companies can get incentivations in order to assume about defense, the social, and in this case, legal, climate risks, because maybe in Peru we have many problems in the case, for example, in the Amazon rivers, in the jungle. Maybe in these cases, companies are very demanded from people to take action. I don't know if maybe you can give us your point of view, Professor.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think at least I think Peru government is trying to enact more direct laws. All right. So what I'm saying is that most of the countries have not enacted direct laws that affect, okay, a company and what directors should do. Of course, this is I have not seen the Peru law, but it's quite interesting. I'll probably research a little bit more. Is that a good model? So I wouldn't be able to consider, because I haven't seen the whole act itself. But it sounds interesting. I think what I should do, what a government should do, okay, they should actually take drastic measures, right? Set it more clearly, all right, to tell directors what are the things that they should consider, so that there is more clearer guidance as to what do you mean by standard of care. Okay, okay. Of course, a lot of people say that you have to engage external climate change experts, but what kind? You know, how are they going to be involved? All these are actually not clear. But I think a clearer guideline should be set down. You know, how boards should consider. Okay, clearer guidelines should be set down. Then you can set the standard of care. Okay, that's one thing. Secondly, is that you should also allow enforceability, as I said. Okay, so which means that other than shareholders, when it comes to climate change issues, all right, okay, maybe there is, you know, either the stock exchange or maybe the corporate registrar, you know, can take action on behalf of shareholders, because sometimes shareholders may not be interested. Okay, but the government or the nation will be interested.
Yeah.
All right. So if you allow direct action against directors, that would actually, you know, make them stand up and try to say, let me learn. Let me try to see what are my standards. What do I have to do? All right. If not, the government will come directly against me. So far, I've seen most of the country's law, there is no direct act. Okay. There's no direct general act, I would say, for all that applies to all companies. Yes, some industry, they may have specific acts. Okay, for instance, those industry that can cause more pollution, there may be specific acts to say that you're not supposed to emit certain things. Okay, and they make the directors liable. But in general, there is no broad act that says that all directors, regardless of your company, okay, you must set certain standards and let us approve, something like that. Okay, so I think this issue is so important that we need to take drastic measures. You know, we need to take drastic measures. You cannot just keep leaving to, you know, the businesses to take voluntary actions, because money still comes. Okay, financials will still be the main consideration. Okay, for companies, that's how they are formed. All right, they are not a charitable organization.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So that's my opinion, but I think Peru's law sounds interesting. I'll definitely take a look. Yes.
Great. Thank you, Professor.
Yes, thank you.
Also, Alberto Salazar wanted to make a question. Alberto?
Thank you, Dr. Lan, for a very interesting presentation. I wonder if you could comment on the development of the duty of care in the American and the Canadian jurisprudence. As you probably know, there have been several cases that have expanded the care mark decision in the US that impose the duty of oversight on directors, which is another form of the duty of care. So there, the care mark decision has been expanded in the last years, and directors are now being held accountable for failing to inspect some operations, etc. In Canada as well, the duty of care has been expanded by the core. So it appears now with a new climate risk disclosure legislation, directors will be seeing their duty of care even more expanded because they will be required to disclose climate risk. So it seems to me that in the US as well as in Canada, the core has detailed the duty of care of directors in many cases, and now they are moving in the direction of a duty of care that require climate risk disclosure. So the issues that you raise about the objective standard of duty of care, the measurement of climate risk, all that already have been addressed by some of these cases. So I wonder if you can comment on that, because it seems to me that maybe in Singapore, the story is different. And now after the Shell decision in May 2021 by the Dutch court, there is now the threat of climate tort litigation, because now after the Shell decision, many companies will probably be sued for failing to comply with carbon emission reduction obligations. So it seems like the core in Europe as well as in North America are going the direction of expanding the duty of care to protect the climate, to ensure that companies comply with carbon emission reduction. So I wonder if you can comment on the developments
of course,
in Europe and North America.
Yes. Thanks, Alberto, for the very good question. Yes, because I actually do research, and I do write on the American company law and Canadian company law as well. And yes, I do know about the care mark cases. But if you look at the two recent litigation, okay, I think I know which are the Bluebell, the ice cream creamery case itself. It was very specific. All right, it was a specific, the plaintiffs were identifiable. All right, it was a specific things that was being done. That's why causation could be proven. All right, so these two cases you have to take with care. It is not really, I wouldn't say that they are really climate change issues. Okay, they are failures in the operations. All right, there are failures in the operations itself because it was identified to the directors something should have been done. All right, but the directors did not do anything. They were making ice cream, and the ice cream in terms of safety precautions, they were not careful. So in the end, some of the people who consumed the ice cream were sick. All right, so of course the directors were found to have breached their duty of care for not ensuring, all right, the premises were safe in that sense. So it is very far from climate. Okay, I wouldn't say that, oh, just because of these two cases on breach of duty of care, it can be extended to climate change issues, which is a bit far. All right, I haven't seen, okay, frankly speaking, even with the extended American concept of duty of care, I haven't seen a direct point where, for instance, you know, I cut down certain trees in Amazon, and now, you know, I have to, I'm being called to say that was a bad decision that I've made. All right, so that there isn't, okay? Is it going to come? Yes, but we haven't seen any. It may, okay, it may, I can only say it may. But if you look at the most of the cases itself, the courts are still very cautious because at the end of the day, it is very difficult to make a balance, okay? You understand how businesses run. So at that time, they may not be able to see, yes, it would actually cause such an impact, okay? All right, so of course the standard may go higher and higher, okay? In terms of establishing standards may be higher when rules are more set. But what I'm saying is that company law letting the courts decide may not be quick enough, okay? As I mentioned to you, climate change issues are very, very important, okay? At the moment, I wouldn't say that any of the company law actually make the directors really very careful in their calculation. Taking into account of climate change. So that's one thing. The second thing about disclosure is you know how disclosure works, right? They just tell you what they're doing. Okay, there's nothing wrong. Even if I'm a major carbon emission, I just tell you what I'm doing. All right, so that's disclosure, and I fulfill my duty by just telling people what I'm doing. So they actually let the market discipline the company to say, oh, you should have done better. You know, maybe we don't want to buy your shares because you still use you know, certain things. Okay, so they are waiting for the outside environment to discipline the company. So that is a very indirect way. I'm just saying that it is you want to wait for the outer environment to exert pressure. You have to wait for many, many more years. All right, before the company would move their actions. So that's my main concern. All right, and I think that company law is not specific enough to actually say that directors should be liable. And I think the other point that you asked is that
Professor, you have silenced your mic.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so I think the other point that you make is about shall. All right, so yes, there may be litigation against company. All right, there may be litigation against company. What I'm saying is that can you litigate against the directors, which is very crucial. Okay, because that we see, okay, you sue the company, the directors will say, okay, I just resign. Okay, I just rotate down. All right, so there's nothing wrong. And the next set of directors that come, they're going to get big pay. They're going to do whatever that will benefit, that they think will benefit the shareholders. Okay, which is to earn more money. Okay, so sue the company. You know that's my argument. You see, yes, you may be easier to get the company, but is it easy to get through the company to the directors? All right, my argument is that it is still not easy. And if you don't catch the actors, you do have specific laws that really force the actors to do something, which is the directors, just by saying that, oh yeah, you owe a positive duty of care. I feel that it's still not enough. Okay, yes, directors are more aware. Okay, we just have to check the box. Okay, we are doing something. We change our sources of getting paper, for instance. You know, we use certain things. So it's just very lip service. I don't think that's really, you know, you're getting to the punch. All right, because directors do not see that you know, that there is a threat. Okay, people think that there is a threat, but directors themselves do not feel the threat. Okay, so that's actually the bottom line. And I say that because, again, that's one of the not my co-authors, but one of the papers that was presented, which I will urge you to read, which is called Green Boardroom. Okay, Green Boardroom, that's written by one of the presenters in the Oxford blog. He did a survey. He felt that, you know, in America, his survey was done in America, in the US, in America and Australia. They said, in actual fact, most of the companies do nothing. Okay, they do the disclosure. Okay, and if you ask the investors, most of them would say that yes, you know, yeah, there's a lot of hype, you know, green thing, but in actual fact, it is, bottom line is, it is still not as effective as what we think. And I think we have to be honest about it, and more things should be done. That's actually my message. All right, don't be too complacent. All right, to think that law is sufficient. I do not think that it's sufficient. All right, and I hope that more should be done. So I hope that has answered your question, Alberto, but feel free, we can continue after this session and we can talk more about it. Yeah,
no, thank you. If I may make a quick comment. Thank you so much. I really agree that there are no explicit use of the duty of care to protect the climate risk yet. And I also agree that the disclosure are not really very effective. But I'm just wondering, in the Shell decision, the Dutch court was very aware of what you're suggesting, that the court, the Hague court, was very unsatisfied with Shell promises and Shell reduction obligation, and the court said, Shell, you are committing, but you're too slow. You are not really complying fast with the carbon emission obligations. So the court went very far by saying you have to reduce carbon emissions by this amount, by this year, very specific. And so don't you find that a more effective than disclosure? Because in North America, the House in the U.S. Congress is now debating the Climate Risk Disclosure Act, that they think it will solve the problem. But as I agree with you, disclosure would not do much. But the Dutch court decision was very, I guess, challenging, because they went very far and saying very specific, right? We don't want more disclosure. We don't want promises. We want this reduction by this year. Very specific.
Yes. So I think I would definitely say that the Shell decision was good. All right. But again, the action was, the decision was against the company. All right. So what I'm saying is that if the next step, if there is actually a next case that you see, either something is done to the board, okay, or the directors had to resign, they were not re-elected again, new board is being done, okay, it's being reinstated, then there is some effect. Okay, my question is, will the previous board be sued? Because like you said, it wasn't sufficient, and the court determined that it wasn't sufficient. All right. So will the board that takes the actions that says that 30% is sufficient, would that board be sued for breach of duty of care? So that's my question. All right. My guess is that at most they will just be changed. I'm not sure even they will be changed actually. You know how Shell company moves. A lot of their board are very old people. All right. So I'm not sure whether they will change. All right. So if nothing is changed to the board, so what? Okay. The board in future may do something. All right. But it may not be sufficient. Okay. So my issue here, in fact, my whole paper or my argument is that you have to do something to the board. You cannot just do something to the company. All right. And I would think that even Shell, okay, even Shell is not enough to go to the board, okay, to be alert to the board, because what the board would do is, okay, I'll just take whatever I've been paid and move on to another company, and nobody remembers. That's the thing. All right, so that's actually my main concern. Yeah.
That's interesting. Thank you so much. I know there's a lot more to discuss. I'm just remembering the 2020 Ernst & Young report to the European community, where they proposed to link executive compensation to climate change, which is another interesting way to deal with the issue. But that's a separate discussion. Thank you. I don't want to abuse your time, but I appreciate your answers. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you so much, Alberto. Thank you. Yeah.
Gracias, Alberto. Thank you, Professor Luh Lan. Thank you, Edison, for being with us. I think we are coming to the end of our meeting. Professor Luh Lan, it was a really interesting topic and a really interesting speech. And we are looking forward to have this conversation again in the future, and hopefully we'll meet you in the flesh.
Yes, in person. I hope to visit your university. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Muchas gracias a todos por acompañarnos en este encuentro virtual, un miércoles en la noche. Este encuentro virtual está organizado por la Maestría en Derecho de la Empresa de la Pontificia Universidad Católica. Agradecemos al profesor Edison Tabra y a la profesora Luh Lan por acompañarnos, y bueno, espero encontrarlos en una siguiente ocasión. Hasta luego. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you, Luh Luh Lan. See you again.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.